The third step in the troop leading procedure process is make a tentative plan. The leader begins this task after he has issued his warning order. To build his tentative plan, the platoon leader references Higher's order. Since he is at the platoon level, the next higher level is a company, and you see a company order displayed here. The operations order lists administrative information first, then follows a 5-paragraph op order format. Further in this video, we will describe in detail what each section means and how to analyze the information to build your own order. For now, we will review Higher's order structure and content for planning reference. The administrative data at the top of the order includes the order number and operational name, any references to be used for this operation, time zones throughout the operation, and task organization of the higher command's subordinate elements. The situation paragraph describes the situation for the overall operation. First, it lists the area of interest pertaining to Higher's area of operation, the adjacent company's areas of operations and objectives, and the enemy car. Next, the order discusses the company's area of operation as it pertains to terrain, weather and light data, and civil considerations. Terrain defines the boundaries the company will operate in, followed by describing the area of operations geography in an OACOC format. The weather and light data lists temperatures, precipitation, sunrise and sunset, BMNT, EENT, wind speeds and directions, and moon phases throughout the operation. And civil considerations are listed in an A-scope format. Next, the situation paragraph outlines known enemy information broken down into general situation, disposition, composition and strength, weapon systems and ranges, capabilities by warfighting functions, the enemy concept of the operation, and the enemy scheme of maneuver as both most probable course of action and most dangerous course of action. Finally, the situation paragraph discusses the friendly situation by providing the mission and intent of higher headquarters and the next higher headquarters, and the missions of adjacent units. The second paragraph of the operations order is the mission statement. The mission statement describes the who, what, where, when, and why of the mission. The third paragraph of an operations order is execution. Execution first lists the commander's intent, described by purpose, key tasks, and end state, followed by the concept of the operation, which contains course of action statement, tasks and purposes of subordinate elements, purposes of significant warfighting functions, the scheme of movement and maneuver in each phase of the overall operation, scheme of fires, tasks to subordinate units, coordinating instructions, CCIR and EEFI, engagement criteria, reporting, control measures, and how to handle enemy personnel. The fourth paragraph in the operations order is sustainment. This paragraph lists logistical services and support with an overall support concept, materials and services, and CASEVAC or medevac procedures. The fifth and final paragraph in the operations order is command and signal. This paragraph lists the location of the commander, succession of command post locations, reports, radio frequencies, code words, challenge and passwords, and call signs. Referencing his Higher's order, the leader now begins to conduct mission analysis. Mission analysis helps the leader develop his vision and confirm what he must do to accomplish his assigned mission. He does this by considering the variables of METTC. The mnemonic METTC stands for mission, enemy, terrain, troops available, time, and civil considerations. At times you may hear METTCM as well, where M stands for media. Mission analysis answers 4 fundamental questions. What is my mission? What is the current situation? How do we accomplish the mission? And what are the risks? Analyzing METTC is a continuous process from planning through execution. As new information is received, updating your METTC analysis will enable you to issue well-developed fragmentary orders to adjust from your previously issued op order. METTC does not need to be analyzed in a specific order. An analysis of the mission. A mission is a task and purpose clearly indicating the action to be taken and the reason for the action. The leader must first understand the mission, intent, and operational concept 1 and 2 levels higher than their unit. Then understand their own unit's purpose nested within higher's purpose. Any constraints imposed on your operation, and all tasks you must execute to accomplish your mission. When you complete analysis of the mission, you will have a restated mission statement for your element to execute. For your mission statement to be properly nested, your operations must directly achieve or support your hire's mission and not be out of scope of hire's intent for the operation. The nested concept is typically visualized as mixing bowls, where the smaller bowl resides within the next larger one's space, not placed outside the next larger bowl. The commander's intent tells you what must be done, but not how. The commander communicates this by describing the purpose of why the operation is happening, key tasks that must happen to be successful, and the desired end state once the mission is achieved. End state describes success relative to where you are located on terrain, the situation of the enemy, the situation of friendly forces, and civilians if necessary. All 4 elements are described in end state. The commander's intent 2 levels up is found in your commander's operations order in paragraph 1, situation. The commander's intent and concept of the operation 1 level up, that is your commander, is found in paragraph 3, execution, of the same order. To identify your prescribed mission, review the concept of the operation and maneuver section of your hire's order in paragraph 3. There you will identify what your element is designated to achieve in hire's operation and how it relates to all elements your commander directs. Additionally, the leader must identify any constraints. These are either prescriptive, which you must do, or prohibitive, which you must not do. Tactical mission tasks are mutually understood terms and are expressed as actions by friendly forces or effects on enemy forces. Although there is no definitive list for tactical mission tasks, the Army has a variety of these terms already defined and commonly referenced for tactical operations. Specified tasks are tasks higher states you will accomplish. Implied tasks or subtasks you know must be done to accomplish your specified tasks. And essential tasks must be done to accomplish your assigned mission. Once the leader understands these, he can develop a restated mission statement for his element. A mission statement is very clear and to the point. It identifies the essential task the element must accomplish and the purpose for achieving it. Mission statements articulate this task and purpose with the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. When drafting the restated mission statement, the leader ensures it is fully nested within hire's mission and intent. Here are 2 examples of a proper mission statement. Military leaders ensure their mission statement conforms to this Army standard, expressed as either who, what, when, where, and why, or when, who, what, where, and why. When designating the who, it should identify the unit in which the leader is in charge of. The what should be a standard tactical task of common understanding, or at a minimum, the meaning of the task is clearly understood by everyone in the unit. The where denotes an objective or named area. The when references a designated coordination time, for example, H hour plus or minus an offset from H hour, or is written in a military standard such as date time group format. The why is a clear purpose. Often the purpose is expressed in how it supports higher or other adjacent elements in achieving their assigned mission. After the leader has analyzed his assigned mission and has written a restated mission statement for his element, he continues to analyze the other mission variables of MET-TC. Deeply understanding and analyzing terrain is critical for leaders, as battles can be won or lost based on the choice of terrain and how leaders leverage terrain to their advantage or enemies' disadvantage. In general, terrain and weather do not favor one side over the other, unless one side is better prepared to operate in the environment or is more familiar with it. However, certain terrain can favor attacking or defending. Typically, Hires order will supply a modified combined obstacle overlay, or MACOO, to assist in your terrain analysis. This video series does not cover how to create a MACOO. However, the leader can place the overlay over his map to better visualize areas of terrain that are geographically restricted for operations. The first step is to define the operational environment as it relates to your area of influence, area of operations, effects of terrain, and effects of weather. Area of influence is geographically larger than area of operations. The leader considers this area because activities located here can affect his area of operations, such as indirect fires or enemy reserves. Additionally, the term area of interest differs from area of influence, where geographic areas of interest are beyond the area of influence, but activities in these areas can have a broader effect on operations. Area of operations are prescribed by higher command, and boundaries are established to differentiate between units' areas of operations. A mindful leader realizes that these boundaries are created by higher to support decentralized execution, but often the boundaries are not perfectly developed. Leaders should analyze the boundaries of their area of operation to ensure their unit is well integrated with the unit geographically adjacent to them. The mnemonic of OACOC is used to analyze the military aspects of ground terrain. Even in a time-restricted environment, leaders should allocate as much time as possible to analyzing terrain. At a minimum, the leader should have the following conclusions. Should template the location of enemy forces and their essential weapon systems, positioning of own friendly assets, understanding the time and space relationship of events, echeloning and identifying of enemy observations and indirect fires, selection of movement techniques and formations to use in certain geographical areas. Leaders identify existing and reinforcing obstacles in his area of operation. Existing obstacles are either natural or man-made, and reinforcing obstacles are constructed and placed or detonated by military forces to be tactically advantageous to maneuver or protection from attack. Categories of terrain are unrestricted, restricted, or severely restricted. These terms describe how difficult movement and maneuver is in various locations within the area of operations. Leaders analyze the effects of these restrictions on their mounted or dismounted movement and formations. Here is an example of a MACOO, a modified combined obstacle overlay. It's displayed with categories of terrain within an area of operations. This area is generally unrestricted, with a small section restricted and a large area severely restricted. This understanding aids the leader to both visualize and plan where and how he can maneuver throughout his area of operation. When conducting offensive operations, the leader ensures he considers how the enemy uses obstacles, the composition of obstacles, and how the obstacles will affect the movement and maneuver of his unit. For defensive operations, the leader understands where the enemy wants to go, where best to engage with and destroy the enemy, referred to as engagement area, and how to divert or draw the enemy into the preferred engagement area, and how to incorporate obstacles and restricted terrain to affect the enemy. An avenue of approach is an air or ground route of an attacking force leading to an objective or key terrain. Avenues of approach are classified by type, formation, and speed of the largest formation traveling on it. Type refers to mounted, dismounted, air, or subterranean. The leader groups mutually supporting mobility corridors to form a single avenue of approach. Offensive considerations include how to use each avenue of approach to support movement and maneuver, the movement techniques and formations in each avenue approach, and likely enemy counterattack routes. Defensive considerations include what are the enemy avenues into the area of operation, how can the enemy use these avenues, what avenues support friendly counterattack. Understanding counterattacks is critical to the leader. After any given battle, a unit becomes highly vulnerable to counterattack while the prevailing unit is still recentering. Winning a battle immediately opens up the prevailing unit to counterattack while they're least prepared to defend themselves. Key terrain is a location or area whose seizure, retention, or control gives a marked advantage to either combatant. It is a conclusion usually arrived at a later point in the planning process, typically after enemy analysis or course of action development. The leader must assess what is decisive terrain, where the seizure or retention of a specific geographic area is essential to mission accomplishment. Observation is the ability to visually see across terrain, and fields of fire are areas that weapon systems can cover from a geographic position. Leaders identify fields of fire along avenues of approach for both friendly and enemy forces. He pays close attention to fields of fire on key terrain, objectives, engagement areas, and integration into obstacles. Leaders identify clear observations and fields of fire throughout the area of operation and how it affects both enemy and friendly, where either side can or cannot concentrate fires and areas of vulnerability. Cover and concealment are not the same. Cover provides physical protection, and concealment hides or obscures being visually seen. Leaders consider how cover and concealment offers advantages and disadvantages to both enemy and friendly throughout the area of operation. Terrain analysis should produce several specific conclusions, such as battle positions, support by fire positions, attack positions, and attack by fire positions, engagement areas and ambush sites, immediate and intermediate objectives, assembly areas, observation posts, C2 nodes, communication relay sites, and indirect fire positions, as well as breach locations and infiltration lanes, to name a few. The leader records these conclusions to both aid in further analysis of enemy and course of action development and to brief his subordinates on the operations order. Displayed here is a technique modeled after Ranger School to visually represent the analysis of OACOC. When briefing, the leader should always provide the so what to his analysis by explaining why or how the effects of OACOC affect the unit. At a minimum, he briefs effects of OACOC from the start point to the objective, on the objective, and from the objective to mission completion. To complete terrain analysis, the leader determines the 5 military aspects of weather, which are visibility, wind, precipitation, cloud cover, and temperature or humidity. The leader determines critical conclusions about visibility factors such as light data, fog, smog, smoke, and dust. How much light is available during BMNT? BMNT is the beginning morning nautical twilight, where it becomes light in the morning just before sunrise. Also the time of sunrise, the time of sunset, EENT. EENT stands for end evening nautical twilight, where it is still somewhat light after sunset. Moonrise, moonset, and the percent of illumination of the moon. When analyzing wind effects, consider if wind speeds and directions can inhibit either friendly or enemy operations by shifting dust, obscurance, sand, chemical plumes, or precipitation across the area of operation. Precipitation has a significant effect on military operations, such as soil saturation and trafficability of mounted assets, reduced visibility, mobility for maneuver, and aiding a unit to achieve better surprise by masking the sound of their movement. Leaders assess the type, amount, and duration of precipitation. Additionally, precipitation has a psychological effect on both enemy and friendly that a leader must keep in mind during his analysis. Cloud cover can affect illumination of the battle space during daytime and night operations. Additionally, cloud cover can hinder air-to-ground assets such as UAV support, helicopter support, and close air support. Leaders should assess the impact of cloud cover during their operation. Leaders also assess the effects of extreme temperature and humidity on personnel and equipment. When operating in extreme environments, special equipment, provisions, or shelters may be needed during operations. Some additional considerations include vegetation, surface soil, drainage, slope, transportation routes, and forest canopy, to name a few. The leader records and displays weather and light data for further planning and briefing his subordinates. The effects of weather are articulated as effects on friendly and effects on enemy. Once again, provide the why it's important to operations when briefing subordinates. The second mission variable to consider is enemy. Leaders analyze the enemy's disposition, composition, strength, doctrine, equipment, capabilities, vulnerabilities, and probable courses of action. In analyzing the enemy, leaders must understand intelligence preparation of the battlefield, or IPB. Although at the TLB level, leaders may not prepare products for subordinates. In the military decision-making process, or MDMP, higher staff levels conduct IPB and prepare products for subordinate elements. In TLPs, Leaders focus on analyzing the environment and determining enemy courses of action. With the analysis conducted on terrain, the leader defines the operational environment and describes environmental effects from the enemy's perspective. Next, the leader evaluates the threat based off of their doctrine. Then, the leader determines how the enemy will fight in their course of action and develops an enemy situation template or SITTEMP. A SITTEMP is typically a map overlay where the leader places enemy personnel or key equipment. With the well-developed SITTEMP, the leader will build his own course of action to fight the analyzed enemy plan. Leaders must understand any assumptions that hire has made to portray the enemy's course of action and his own assumptions. One must continually improve their situational understanding of the enemy and update their enemy templates as new information or trends become available. In doctrinal analysis, leaders must know more than just the number and types of vehicles, soldiers, or weapons the enemy has. One must thoroughly understand when, where, and how the enemy prefers or tends to use his assets. Here's an example of an enemy doctemp or doctrinal template. It depicts how the enemy prefers to tactically fight without the effects of weather or terrain, similar to how U.S. field manuals display friendly doctrine. Order of battle refers to how a military arrays their forces for battle in composition, disposition, and strength. Composition is what personnel and equipment assets the enemy has available. Disposition refers to how the enemy has arrayed their composition across terrain. And strength refers to the number of personnel and equipment the enemy can employ within their composition. At the company level and below, leaders should translate strength from percentages into actual numbers of enemy personnel and key equipment that their subordinates may encounter. Analyzing enemy capabilities is critical in the IPB process. Leaders should understand enemy capabilities by each of the warfighting functions. The warfighting functions are movement and maneuver, intelligence, fire, sustainment, mission command, and protection. Leaders can reference warfighting functions as checklists to address every significant element the enemy brings to the fight. Leaders should also identify the capabilities of his enemy's next higher echelon. Enemy recent activities must be understood to possibly gain insight to future activities. With additional time, leaders can use IPB pattern analysis techniques. However, that is not covered in this video series. Armed with the information about the enemy, the leader can determine the enemy's course of action. The mental exercise of enemy course of action development is critical for the leader to build out a mental model of how the enemy will behave in the area of operation. Once this analysis is complete, the leader will have a narrative about the enemy's actions, a concept sketch, and the situational template developed for his own tactical plan and to brief subordinates. Leaders use the course of action development process with a mnemonic AGADAP to develop the enemy's likely plan. AGADAP stands for Analyze Relative Combat Power, Generate Options, Array Forces, Develop the Concept of the Operation, Assign Responsibilities, Prepare a Course of Action Statement, and a Sketch. The first step of AGADAP is to analyze relative combat power. This is done by warfighting functions. The leader identifies force ratios and uses a relative combat power matrix to record significant deductions. Here's an example of a relative combat power analysis worksheet, where the warfighting functions are listed on the left and the analysis on friendly and enemy are listed on the top of the columns. Leaders can record advantages and disadvantages by warfighting function for both friendly and enemy to visualize tactical trade-offs. Analyzing both friendly and enemy lead to deductions that can be fulfilled by specific tactics, techniques, or procedures, commonly abbreviated as TTPs. Next is generate options. In this stage of IPB, the leader puts himself in the position of the enemy and asks how the enemy will likely fight